Hey Baruch, how you doing this week?
Hey, Jeremy, how are you? I'm good, thank God. How are you?
Doing incredibly well. It's
One
been a
second.
is
My computer is okay. For those of you that don't know, I had some technical problems where my old computer absolutely crashed.
oh
So
yeah.
now I'm using my father's old computer, which has it's bloated because of battery. I just said, "Hey, Jeremy," and apparently my computer has Siri, so that just started talking. So I didn't hear what you said. So
Oh gosh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
yeah, it's another one of
So
those weeks.
it's one of those weeks. That's basically what I was saying. So yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I just remembered as I'm like going live, as I'm like putting it on, is that I didn't promote this on LinkedIn as I normally do. So
Ah,
it's gonna be funny. So whoever's actually like just it suddenly popped up on your screen and you're just tuning in. Thank you so much. And it's
yeah.
really about that, it's about that inner circle. You guys are in it, and that's gonna be our
Mhm.
conversation today. It was a
Exactly.
really, really interesting. I mean, all of our podcast is really interesting, but getting to realize, like I was listening to it this morning, and I was like, getting to realize that this is episode, what is it, 23?
23.
It's it's right at the end. We only have 25 planned. That's all we have really planned. We have to talk about what we're going to do, but it's been such a journey creating that community, bringing all these people together, this inner circle. um, it's crazy. So there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot to explore, and we're coming towards the end, so it's exciting.
Yeah, and I'm
At
gonna
least
say, let's turn it. Okay, I want to do another one of those things that I do. Oh God, let's turn it to the inner circle and say, hey guys, we only got 25 episodes planned. What would you like to see between episode 25 and episode 1 of season 2? So put those
yeah,
in the comments too, because we will
that's
take your feedback into account. It's important. But let's do it. Let's bring in our wonderful
right.
guest for today,
Here he is,
Thomas
Tom.
Earp, or Tom Earp.
Yeah,
I did it. I messed it
Hi
up.
guys. Tom, Tommy, Thomas. Like I said, it doesn't really matter.
yeah.
How's it
That's
going,
what we were
Tom?
talking about earlier. We were like, how are we gonna present you? How are we gonna call you? I know you as Thomas. Everything in all of our discussion before, you're saying Tom, and so like, what do you want? So we used all the names here. Whoever you
Yeah.
are, you're awesome. We really appreciate, Tom, that you came onto the show. So it's really a pleasure and a privilege to have you here.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you guys for having me. You're both a joy, a lot of fun, especially when you're together. It just seems to escalate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Things tend to escalate when Yuri and I get together. Well, let's get right into it. That is one of the nice things about having an inner circle and names is your names change based on who you're around. I know because my mother's watching, we're actually going to call me Baruch Noam,
Ooh,
because otherwise most people call me Baruch, and that's one of those things, hi Ma, that we're just going to go by Baruch Noam, let's just say. But let's introduce our wonderful guest for tonight. So our guest tonight is Tom Earp. He is a coach, speaker, and educator with over 30 years in personal and professional development. He is the founder and managing director of Next Gen Ability, providing consulting, training, and coaching specializing in leadership dynamics, transforming leaders, teams, and careers for the next generation of work. Tom believes that the quality of life, happiness, and work is dependent on the quality of our relationships, and that the quality of our relationships is dependent on the quality of our communication with ourselves and with others. At the core of leadership dynamics is ESP, emotional, social, and personal intelligence. Tom helps leaders and teams tune in, tap in, and turn on their ESP to become enlightened leaders and empowered teams to help make shift happen culturally for their organizations. I have to say, that's probably one of the most brilliant bios I've ever read. And internally, I'm going, holy crud muffins, this guy knows what he's talking about. And that's speaking directly to me. So that's fascinating. I love how you've married the world of personal and professional development, but also education and personal and professional development. And then we'll talk more about that. But Tom, talk to us about how you got there. Tell us more about what it is that you do, and then what was the journey where you started from to where you are now? Because that is fascinating.
Brilliant.
Okay, well, I'll start with where I am and what I'm doing in particular right now as a coach and trainer as well as consultant, and that's really looking at leadership and team dynamics. For me, it's not about leadership training because there are how many books on leadership, but our leadership, according to research, has not really improved, at least organizationally. And team building is one of those elusive concepts as well. And it kind of ties into what you're talking about tonight with community. Just because you have a group of people doesn't mean you have a community any more than it means you have a team. There has to be some common connection, some kind of common bond, not just a common goal, but just the common language in which they communicate with each other. And so I basically help people understand themselves better so they can communicate with themselves and others in a way that they can be best understood. And meanwhile, seeking to understand other people. And so as leaders become more comfortable in their own skin and more comfortable getting under the skin of others, not in an agitating way, but to really get underneath who they are and discover them, they're better able to lead them, not where they necessarily want them to go, but help them learn how to lead themselves to where we want to go.
Right.
I got my start in education. I, like most of us, probably struggled in the early years of what it was that I wanted to major in, what did I want to do with the rest of my life when I grow up. Still kind of curious about that, the growing up part, at least. I went to college initially to be an engineer because I had believed that I was good in math and I loved the drafting and design aspect of the engineering process, creativity. But thanks to Dr. Goodall, he changed my life altogether. I realized that my teachers in high school had lied to me about my math prowess. And so I discovered a book over the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, Fast Track Careers to Engineering. And that's where I realized that this is not the life for me, that most engineers don't do engineering. And a lot of it had time behind a desk. And I knew that would be just insanity for me. So I began that journey of looking, not necessarily outside myself, because a lot of people were, doctor, lawyer, that kind of stuff. But I began to look inside and what was it that really turned me on? And I found a love for speech in high school, psychology in high school. And so as I began to take those classes my sophomore year, I just fell in love. I fell in love with communication courses primarily because of my love for psychology and human behavior, and communication is just the vehicle for all of that. And so got my bachelor's in that, got my master's as well. And during my master's program, I was a teaching assistant, actually handling my own classes. And that was where I caught the bug for the educational process. And it's just kind of spiraled from there to where we are today. I cut my teeth in grad school as a teaching assistant, coaching speech and debate. And my first team actually coached me because they were experienced from high school and 2 or 3 years in college already. And I learned from them. I learned more about human nature, human conditioning, and the behavioral process, as well as the actual events themselves, and went on to coach my own teams over the years. And it was in that coaching process with speech that I really discovered my love for the self-improvement, personal and professional development. I was a really good coach. My teams were very successful, but not so much because of my prowess with debate and public speaking per se, as much as it was understanding people and helping them select topics and ideas that were most suitable for them. And it was just a really good fit. And so over time, this began to venture outside the classroom to do some training, some development, and found a real love for the coaching process. It's just, I was doing it all those years and didn't know it, and went through some formal training, and just a lot of the light bulbs went off. And so that's where I find myself now. I've done a lot of leadership and team development over the years, probably since 2002. But about 5 years ago, I transitioned into the career development, career transition, life transition coaching phase. But I found a lot of my coaching clients were not so much dissatisfied with their job as much as they were dissatisfied with the community, the team relationships, or their leadership perspectives. And so as I helped them discover themselves so that others could discover them, it seemed that the real key to helping people in their career development is with leadership and team development. For me, it's seamless that if a leader understands their people and develops them individually for their career, it's going to spill over into the team, and those team members become leaders, and it just begins to just sort of cascade down and flow forward.
Wow.
So that's what I do in a nutshell.
No, it's fascinating. And again, I love the marriage of the education and the coaching and just the journey. And that's, to me, the thing that always gets me is a person's journey from wherever it was that they started to where they are now, and all the little teeny tiny things that had to happen along the way to get that to happen. But I talk about this all the time. To me, there's a difference, and it's not to me, it's to my mentors and rabbinical mentors. There's a difference between a teacher and an educator. And Yermi's like, he knows I'm going to go there. He knew it. I saw like the gears turning. Teaching is imparting information. It's teaching 1 + 1 = 2. An educator is somebody who builds character and develops skills. And oftentimes, an educator is also a guide, is a mentor, is a coach. So that's why really good educators, and again, I'm not saying teachers, really good educators transition very easily into coaching because you're already doing it. I tell anybody that's ever hired me for as a teacher, I will be the world's worst teacher. Like I cannot teach academics worth beans. But if you want to get your kids from behaving in a certain way to another way at the end of the year, I'm your guy, because that's character development. It's skill building. So thank you so much for sharing that, because it's fascinating and seeing the way you got there, and it all just makes so much sense.
Yeah. Well, and what we're talking about tonight with the inner circle and relationships there, the influence and impact, a really good mentor or anyone in our inner circle comes down to not someone who's just going to instill in us what we need to know and learn, but elicit from us the better part of us. And I think that's where the classroom situation comes into play there too, that I'm not just teaching about these things, we're learning it and we're doing it and we're living it in the process. And that's one of the benefits of teaching communication. It's not algebra, which no one cares about.
That's so true. And I mean, it was funny that you mentioned that, and I'm so glad in your introduction. It's also really, sorry, this is one tangent just now. It's really also funny how, Baruch and I here are sitting and listening to your story, and what Baruch was going to get out of what you said and what I will get out of what you said, kind of like two separate things, which actually talks to our strengths, which talks to our expertise. I knew Baruch was going to go that education route. I knew that. Like, you're right, by the way. You're 100% right. And for me, I was really listening to. I love how you said it's that synergy, that that leader and the team. If you have the right team and you have the right leader, that synergy, that flow, that energy, which is my expertise as well. That's what I work on. That it's brilliant how you said that. And it's really, so this morning I had, somebody listened to our audio podcast earlier this morning, sends me a text and is like, wait, what does it have to do with, like, last week you spoke about leadership and now you're talking about, round circle, like round table. What's the connection there? And I was like, well, you're going to have to come tonight because we have a guest for you. So I hope. But it's really true, because when we were designing this show, we had two people lined up for leadership, two experts in leadership, you and Rick from last week, and we just, how are we gonna use both of you for this, like to interview both of you? And it was really the testament of like, okay, let's have Rick talk about leadership in general. And then let's have Tom really take it to that next level and really talk about that community because of that synergy. So this that you magically said that today, talks to that testament, which is really, really true. Having that importance of that inner circle is really a big part in leadership, is knowing how to surround yourself with with the right people. That's really what it is. You started the conversation. So please, Tom, could you just expand more about, surrounding yourself with the right people, like creating your inner circle, I guess.
Yeah, I'll use an example, sort of as an analogy, perhaps. I was chair of a communication department several years back, and when I took the role, one of the faculty members had just resigned, and she and I actually had an opportunity to connect just as she was exiting that semester, and it was over the summer that I was tapped as chair. So I was dubbed with the difficult challenge of finding a faculty member to fill a particular role in a very short period of time. And I did interview several candidates, did due diligence and checking up on their credentials and their experiences and so forth. And it's not that they weren't qualified and not that they weren't good people. It just didn't fit.
Didn't vibe.
And so, yeah. So I just picked up the phone and called my former colleague and said, what do I need to do to get you back? And she connected with me and we worked out the details, reunited her with the team. And one day she introduced me to a friend of hers as this is Tom. He's my boss. And I'm not your boss. I may be in a leadership position. I may have this title. I may be the final authority, say so, decision maker in our process. But I created a team element, and our students even commented on the difference in the attitude, the difference in the environmental context of our department when they came in that semester. That just seems like something is different. They saw me I turned one of our closets into a break room, and I put a coffee pot in there and a table for us to have our little meetings. And they saw me delivering coffee to this colleague that I was just sharing with. And she and I were probably closer than the others in the department, but I still had that team community, and I wanted them to call me out. I wanted to create that relationship where, we're all equals here. We're all educated. We're all professionals in the things that we do. And any decisions I make, I've got to have your input. You are my inner circle. And so there were times that they did call me out, and it's much appreciated because you want a team that's going to not only share your vision, but help you create it and shape it along the way. And I think that's how an inner circle should operate, whether it's outside the work context, it's just us as individuals who are professionals seeking growth and development ourselves, seeking a group of people that we can connect with and hang with, help them grow and invest in them, and vice versa. It's got to have that ebb and flow of dynamics where the synergy, as you mentioned it, is mutual. If it's just one way, it's not going to be as beneficial to us. It's not that we can't learn something, but it's more the teaching role then. And I may be learning new information, learning new skills, growing in my knowledge. But I think we all need that next step in the relationship, that next level in that relationship to sort of urge us on, cheer us on, keep us from going over the cliffs when we're about to head in that direction, to give us that advice, to give us that mentoring. But it's much more of the iron sharpening iron process where we're making each other better because we're together, we're working together, and that relationship makes both of us better.
Wow. The thing is, it takes a big individual to be able to accept that from others. And especially if you're in a leadership position or you're in a hierarchy where you are, let's say, at the top of the pyramid, to be able to say, hey, I want to hear from those people that I'm employing, or those people that are, so to speak, under me. It takes a big person to be able to do that. But it, like you're saying, it makes the world of a difference. I'm just looking at the schools that I've worked at. Staff appreciation was always that thing that was really funny. Like a teacher or an educator judges a school based off of their staff appreciation. I worked at places where staff was, you had a staff room that they filled with cookies every once in a while. Half the time they were stale and nobody paid attention to anything. Then I worked at schools where it was staff appreciation was always the same thing. And it was always like stale sushi salad or whatever. And they were doing it because they were obligated to. And then, there was a school I worked at 2 years ago where staff appreciation was a big thing, but it was never about the coffee or the cookies. It was about everything in between. Right. It was the fact that at one of the schools, the administration didn't care about us. Like, you were there to perform a job, do your job, and they even took advantage of us. At the other school, they appreciated us, but it was kind of like, hey, you're here to do your job, and that is the extent of our relationship. And then there was a school 2 years ago where, there was that staff appreciation, but it was also my supervisors and the administrators would come over and ask for input and ask for feedback, just like you're saying. And you didn't feel like there was this hierarchy. Sure, there was the guy that paid my bills. There was the guy that paid me. There was my supervisor who made sure I was doing my job. But it was a team. It was a family. And I could go to them for advice and they could come to me for advice. And it's a world of a difference. But also we as individuals, wherever we are in life, both for personal and professional, we have to create that inner circle. I left that school. I won't say where. I almost said where. I left that school where it was the sushi salad appreciation to go to a different school specifically because of the inner circle that was going to be created. And I wanted to level up my educational ability by going to a new school. And I took an $8,000 pay decrease to go there. They were paying me $8,000 less to join them at this school, even though I'd already been teaching for 10, 12 years or whatever it was. So I shouldn't have. But it was because I'm choosing who I'm going to allow in my professional inner circle, but also a personal inner circle. I've let people in and out based off of how they serve me or how I can serve them. And if a person doesn't fit into my current stage in life, or if they're tainting it or causing toxicity in it, then, I'm going to let them go, so to speak. And, Jeremy and I talk about this in the mental real estate, program that we have. But so I love everything that you're saying because it's so on point.
I want to add one thing. I just wanted to add one thing. Actually, we had one of the guests a couple of weeks ago or a few weeks ago now, Israel Pakar, and he's that principal of that school, if I'm allowed to break the ice on that one. Incredible. And I mean, he mentioned it in the show, and we're so grateful that he, that both of you are saying basically the same thing, is that he in effect said, I'm in that leadership position, and technically, I'm the employer or the boss or the whatever. He says, but I'm held accountable to you, let's say the people who I'm in a sense leading, and you guys are the ones who have to give me that feedback and tell me how could I be a better employer or whatever for you, because ultimately if I'm a better employer to you, then you're a better educator to the children. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here doing, and I love how he said that, and it's very directly related to what you said, is like, I'm here to serve you so that you could do the job. My job is to make sure that you do your job, right. And your job is to make sure that the children are getting educated. You know what I mean? And the same thing in your situation. Your job was to work with your team, and what is it that I need to tell you to come back, and what is it that I need to do? And maybe I'm in that leadership position where you call me a boss or whatever, but in a sense, like, that's just my position. That's my responsibility right now. But you hold me accountable to my responsibility. That's what I'm hearing. And right. I have this follow-up question, which is really, really, it kind of like popped up in my head. And I think you're the ideal person to kind of respond to that. Why is this so novel? Why is this like to me, it's like, duh. Okay. But I mean, like, here we're talking as if like, well, that's how it needs to be. And I could just see like some audience members looking at this and they're like, well, my boss ain't like that. Or, like they can't even imagine a boss being that way or an employer or whatever. Tom, why is it so novel?
Especially because we've all experienced bad leadership.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I do. I think it comes down to, I don't oversimplify it, but I do think it comes down to that three-letter word, ego. And that's where, what I call enlightened leaders, it's someone who has gotten over themselves.
Yeah.
And it's not that they don't have an ego, because, Tom does. Tom has, high expectations. I don't always meet my standards, in my pursuit, and my ego gets a little bruised because of that. But I think it comes to a level of sort of growing up, maturing in that process, and recognizing your talents, recognizing your skills and your competence, but also owning them and embracing them in light of the whole person that you are, that you embody. And I'm not perfect. I don't know all the answers.
Right.
It's one of the things I love about coaching is I don't have to have all the answers. I just have to know how to listen and ask the right questions. And that's, I think, how I came about running and leading the department the way that I did, is that I knew that if I wanted to be my best, and the things that I've been charged with for the department to increase enrollment, to increase retention, and to increase retention of the faculty,
sure,
then I needed to sow that process into them. And that in the end makes me look better.
Sure.
Which does or can feed the ego, but it's recognizing that my authentic self, my higher self, my better self is not going to be self-actualized on its own. Me simply directing them to teach these courses this way or that, without any of their own individual freedom, it's going to restrict and limit them. It's going to restrict and limit the departmental growth, and it's going to make me look bad, ultimately. And so it is somewhat selfish, but I think it's a healthy, selfish perspective. When I was coaching speech and debate, my number one rule with my team is don't embarrass me. And that's probably the inverse way of saying, make me look good. But it was also for their benefit, because one of the things I told them is that your speech begins when you get off the van. That's when people are going to first make that first impression of you. And so if you act an idiot out here, it's going to be hard for them to get over that idiot in that competition room where you're competing and performing. So it's looking at the whole. So I think, answer simply, it's ego. And we've become very, very short-sighted. I think we look for the quick fix, the shortest route, the shortcuts, and telling people to do what we want them to do, telling them what they need to do. Just do your job and shut up, sit down. It seems easier, but there's a whole lot of payment that you're going to be responsible for later on, relationally. And people are either aggressive in their reactions to that, or they'll say yes sir, no sir, just like I did when I was sent to the principal's office as a kid. But it's going in one ear and out the other, and it can create passive aggressive behavior. Well, they'll tell you they will do it, but they might just drag their feet.
Sure.
Right. Yep. You can't win that battle, not long term. And I think it's changing now, at least from the outside in. I do think you see more programs about it, more discussion about it, more books about it from this perspective, but it still hasn't trickled down to the boots on the ground as much. Because I feel like a lot of people that were in my position, I know for a fact, just because of conversations I had with them, they felt under the thumb. They felt under, the gun against their head to get it done, to perform. And so they are reacting to that and just simply acting out on others, as opposed to being confident in who they are and say, okay, so what's the best way to accomplish this?
Mm.
And I just went to the source. Okay, here's what we've been charged with. How do you think we need to be approaching this? I've got some ideas, but here's an opportunity for you to share that with me. It's getting over self. That was a long way around the road.
I think it's a
really
longer.
was.
I think you're 100% right in the sense of, why like it's happening from that outside in a sense. It's happening from the outside. I totally 1,000,000% agree with you on the ego part of it. That is without a doubt. And I mean it's a larger discussion, perhaps to have a follow-up interview or a follow-up discussion about it,
Casual chats.
a casual chats or something like that. I think it's definitely a larger conversation of how to get, the boots on the ground, how to get their buy-in and how to get that into it. But I do want to highlight, Mindy put here a comment where she's talking about enlightened leadership provides a safe space for others to share and give and receive support. I highlight this comment because it's exactly, the segue into our second part of the conversation where, where we're talking about that influence, that mentorship, those advisors. Where are you going as a leader or as anybody? Where are you going to get your advice from? You're creating this inner circle for you, and who are the elements and who are the components that are within this, this circle. I can only talk for myself. Growing up in an environment of entrepreneurs, growing up in the business world all my life, so I was exposed from as early as I can remember business, and I do remember seeing leadership styles that I wasn't, I didn't agree to that leadership style. And here I go, build a business. I built it to a relatively large size. And I suddenly started discovering that I was that kind of leader that I despised or that I disliked just because I was so exposed to it. My inner circle influenced me in that kind of way. And it took, a trauma, it took a situation to lose what I had, and then kind of like take the time to rebuild. And as you said, dig deep, surround myself with the right people, do all those elements that I had to create a whole new world for myself and start from scratch. And this is where I am today. But it really, really was, this Talmudic teaching and a Bible teaching that we learned from King David, where you learn from everybody and you're always influenced at any given time. And it's really those surroundings and, who are you considering your influence? So talking to that, Tom, who are you surrounding yourself with, and what are you pulling out of those people as a leader or not necessarily in a leader, whatever position you're in, what are you getting out of it?
Yeah, as I mentioned, maybe it was in our pre-show conversation. I've just been back in the States for 5 years, and we live on a farm, just me, dog, a couple of cats, and my wife. And one of our sons still lives with us temporarily. He's actually hitting the road next week. And I didn't really jump back in to my friends and my church community. They had moved on and moved out. And I didn't really reconnect with that. And so I felt a little bit lonely at first. I did have teaching that I was doing, but I was spending more time on the road than I was in the classroom, going to 5 different campuses to teach my courses. And so there really wasn't a lot of time to go into town just to hang out. And that's just a waste of time anyway. But building a business online, it's even lonelier, right? Being that solopreneur. And I think it becomes even more important, more essential for us to connect. We might be connecting with people through posts and DMing and video, but to really connect on a relational level is important. And in our coaching mastermind groups and coaching communities, we might have some of those relationships, but it's still more than just simply surrounding yourself with a group of people. It's finding those key relationships. If I can embarrass Mindy, I'll call her out. So she's one of my inner circle, and she reminded me when I was sharing this week that it's funny, I'm talking about this topic and I got no friends. And she said, no, you've got plenty of friends. And she reminded me of the people that I am in close contact and connection with on a weekly or
Take one
bi-weekly
position if
basis.
it's open.
And I would defer to you as well as being one of those. I think it's something I want to have more often with you and people like you. But I've got a colleague from Dubai he formerly of Dubai. He just recently retired and moved on. But he and I were, videoing every other week, sometimes weekly.
Wow.
And, it's a 2-hour chunk out of my day. And, it's sometimes you say, well, I'm just so busy. I don't have time for that. But when I didn't have that, I regretted it. I felt the energy leaking and it just kind of flowing out of me. And so it was a nice recharge for us to talk. And Mindy and I and Shane that I was just referencing, I have a former student who has written a book on kindness and is now building a speaking career. He was one of my speech students way long ago. And I reached out to him to help him with his book and wanted to help support him and his speaking career. So he and I are helping each other. We're meeting weekly. Most of the time weekly right now. He's on summer vacation in Canada, but we have those accountability sessions. Yeah. Not only reporting in and helping track with each other, but we talk about our families. We talk about personal challenges that we have. He confides in me in ways that he doesn't feel comfortable with even close friends at church. And I think that those are the kind of relationships you want to have. So you're looking to find those people who are, one, perhaps like-minded, maybe not exactly, but somewhere along the scale of topics like your faith, your family, friendships, your finances, and the other F for me is fitness. And it's not that all of us have to be engaged in all 5 of those at the same time, but those are areas of my life that are important to me. And we talk about all those as well as business stuff. And we pick each other up when the other one's down. Minnie and I joke around about when she's going through something, it's either just recently happened to me or it's on the horizon, because we have this parallel universe that we're operating in. And so as I'm coaching her and giving her some insight, I go, wow, write that down because I'm going to need to hear that. And so, and the same is true with the inverse of that, with relationship for her and me. But there are about five people that I would say that are on my radar as inner circle that I reach out to at least on a bi-weekly basis. Mindy and I are almost daily. It's we're best of friends, and we've never met each other live yet. So
wow,
one day,
very soon.
Well, you know what the saying is? There's that famous saying that you are a direct reflection of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So five is a great number, One of the things that you said that, that really reminded me of something my mentor said is that just because somebody loves you and they want what's best for you doesn't mean that they know what's best for you. And so we have to remember that, because oftentimes the people we get the most advice from for relationships and finances and our direction in life are our family and relatives, when in reality, yeah, they love us and they want what is best for us. They don't necessarily know what is best for us. But the same thing with our bosses. We can go to our bosses for career advice. Well, they just want a good employee. They don't necessarily want us to succeed to the best of our capacity. And that's something we have to remember, is that, like you said, we have to find people who know what they're talking about with the specific areas in life that we're looking for, whether that's personal or whether that's professional. And one other thing I wanted to mention is, so with Yirmi and I are part of the Chabad Hasidic sect of Judaism. We have our mentor, our leader, our guide, who is the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who's no longer here physically, but he very famously said, "Aseh lecha rav keneh lecha chaver." Make for yourself a rav, a mentor. Acquire for yourself a friend. I was recently going through some of my father's documents, and I found a letter of correspondence that my father had received from the Rebbe, where they were talking about this concept of a mentor. And the Rebbe specifically said the whole thing of acquire for yourself a mentor is, first of all, be willing to invest in it, but also understand that if that one is no longer working for you, find somebody else. Fire them, and he didn't use the words fire, but move on. Make sure you always have the right mentors and guides for any given period of time that you're in, any part of life that you're experiencing. And that's something that's so important for all of us to remember. Again, whether it's for our business, whether it's for our career, whether it's for our personal life, our finances, whatever it may be, find the right people, find those people who, and the way I look at it is, a mentor is somebody who's been there, done that. They're already there. They're doing what you want to do, and they can guide you based off of actual experience. To me, Yermi is one of my mentors. He's also one of my 5 people, but he's one of my mentors because he is at a point in his life, personally as well as professionally in business, that I can look to him and say, hey, that's where I want to be within the next 5 years, and I can learn from him. And that's extremely important, but it's also for personal relationships. And we have to all, like, business concepts and education concepts and personal life, they all go hand in hand. Everything can be applied to everything. Yermi's book, which is coming out soon, For the Love of Success, it's how his personal life is now also affecting his professional life, and everybody else can learn from that as well. So it's all intertwined and commingled, and I'm using words that I don't even know what they mean, but
connected.
Yeah. Connected.
Yeah. Well, I want to echo what both of you are really saying. It's that, and I talk a lot about this, is that everybody has their space and their time. Everybody has their place and, what their purpose is, for the lack of better words. Like a lot of people, they say, don't take advice from family members when it comes to,
Right.
career, dating, all these different elements or whatever. Yes and no. I mean, my wife, for example, is one of my greatest mentors and confidants, and I run almost everything by her, every big decision. And yeah, she is a loved one. She is she is also like really, really close to the picture in a sense.
Right.
Where in certain relationships, that may not be the best person to go ask for advice. However, she has demonstrated, to me at least, that her advice could come very sound. Her advice could come very sober. She could remove herself. So all these elements. So I often say, I was like, really, really pick and choose where you're going to get your information from. You have to have a level of, kind of like clarity in a sense, that understand where you're getting your information from. It doesn't mean all bosses are terrible and all bosses will give you bad, career advice. Some of my greatest career advice came from certain bosses that I had. Other
Right.
bosses fired me because I was coming for career advice, whatever. But, you have to kind of like pick and choose who you're going to advice for based on what is the value you're going to get. So I say, trial and error, obviously.
Yes.
Pick and choose, take everything with a grain of salt, all these kind of today cliche, sayings and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of like basically pick and choose your friends in a sense. Baruch was talking about mental real estate. That's exactly what we talk about, is who gets into what tier and what boundary or what kind of relationship do I have to these individuals. You're not going to get rid of your parent, let's say. You can't just stop talking to your parent in a sense or whatever, unless the situation is really bad or whatever. But each person gets their place, and people could always move in those quote unquote tiers, but pick and choose where you get your information from, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and not every one of my friends or everyone in my inner circle is going to be my go-to source for every topic.
Right.
That's some are more holistic with me. I think Mindy would fit into that category. Shane would fit into that category. Someone who I've developed a rapport with that has created a better sense of friendship and trust along the way. And I think there are some people that I might only hit 3 of the 5, or
Right.
if it's a financial, they may not know anything about friendship, but other than the connection that they may have with me. But you want to go to the best source, and like you said, I think some of it is sort of trust and verify
Right.
along the way. It's kind of like shopping for clothes. I've tried clothes on, at the store, and I really wanted that to work, but it really wasn't a good fit. And so now it sits in my closet unworn, and I was just hoping that it would fit better later or something along that line. And it's just, it looks good on the rack. It looks good in your mind. And so sometimes friends are like that. They may be good friends, but it's not necessarily the best fit for the role and the goals that you might have for the impact and influence that you're looking for. And it needs to be, there are mentors who may be a little bit more one way, but I think what really is crucial for us is to have that mutual friend where it is the iron sharpening iron, we're challenging each other, we make each other better, we're holding each other accountable, but we're also there to lift them up and be lifted up when we need that helping hand, that encouragement. And they also let us kind of run off at the mouth. It's easy in our coaching world to say, well, don't say those negative things. But, I think we needed a good 5, 10, 15 minutes sometimes. Just let it out, own it, embrace it, and just boom. And it's a release valve that they might not get anywhere else.
Yeah.
Even with a spouse, sometimes you don't want them to feel bad for the way you feel because in your heart of hearts, that it's just a temporary thing. And so you don't want to do harm to that relationship or perception of that relationship. But yeah, you've got to be careful where you go for advice. Family can be a good source. My mom doesn't get what I do. My family outside my wife and I think my boys might understand, but to a greater extent. My mom thinks I should go get a job with the post office. It's secure, it's safe, it's civil servant. She doesn't understand the risk mindset, the educational and the coaching mindset as well. It's so there are some things I would want, would hear from her, but on a large scale, with what I do with my career, and my personal development, probably not so much.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear. I'm not saying don't go to your family for anything. Like, let's be clear. No. What I'm saying is there's a time and place for everyone. If I need photography advice, I'm going to my mother because she's an expert photographer. If I'm looking for real estate, I'll go to my brother because he's been in that industry for years. Family can be a great asset, but the point I'm trying to make is that don't think that just because they're family and just because they're close friends that you need to go to them, but choose the best people. So the fact that you go to your wife for business and that's amazing and that's brilliant. 100% totally do that. I run a lot of my stuff by my wife, Shayna, because she's my partner, not just in life, she's my partner in business. There are certain things I don't need to run by her because what does she know? What does she care? Etc. But 100%, it is about finding the right people for the right thing in every matter.
Yeah. I think I was sharing with it's a college that I actually attended as a student, and then later went back and taught at. They are under new leadership, and they're creating some strategic vision, and they've got educational consulting companies coming in to give them advice on this, that, and the other. And I've been around the block long enough to see consulting companies go hawking their products and their services, money out, but no real change. Right. And so I just kind of put it out there. Let's have a conversation first. And I said, let me just see if I can help you with the right questions.
Right.
I don't necessarily promise that I have all the right answers, but that's not important. I think you do. If I ask the right questions to lead you to those discoveries and help you work with your team to get those team members to share their ideas openly and freely as well. And one of the things I said is, bottom line, I don't have a dog in the fight. Even though eventually it might become a paid, partnership alliance in a coaching client relationship, but it depends on how that vested that advisor is in regard to their bias. And that's where I think family, because they do have their fears. My mom wants me to get a job at the post office because she wants security for me.
Right.
But that's her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that same fear or drive that she does. And I think, as I'm looking at the comments on here, Rick mentioned about your question a while ago, many bosses don't want to give career advice because that appears as a threat to their position. Well, they've got a dog in the fight. They may not want you to, they don't want you to rise to a certain level. But I think mentors, the inner circle, leaders all together as a larger group, they understand that when the tide rises, it raises all ships.
Exactly.
And it's not going to do me any good to burn your ship. It's not going to make my ship any better or higher. But sometimes people do give advice that way, and that's what you have to be wary of. Some of the worst advice I've gotten has been close friends. They were close friends because of the proximity, maybe through college and so forth, but not necessarily because we still shared a lot of common goals. I think as you evolve and grow and transform, those inner circles change. They're still my friends. I still like them. They like me, but that's not who I go to.
Right. I actually want to get back to that in one quick second, because that is kind of like the last segment of the show about how the circles kind of work. But this is the part of the show a little bit earlier usually, but this is such a great conversation. People know it by now. We have a weekly clubhouse where we have this discussion, where we expand the discussion. We open up the floor to the audience to be part of that inner circle in this discussion here. So tomorrow at 7 p.m. on the clubhouse, you just have to search the clubhouse, the Exceptionally Irresistible Show. And the event starts at 7 p.m. We want to see you there and have that discussion with you. And again, without further ado, the last segment is really that whole idea of, do you go find your community or do you create your community? I think that's a great debate, that we have, in the sense of your inner circle will change in a sense. So are you going to go search for community, or are you going to create a community? Like one that's already existing versus a new one?
Yeah.
Just to clarify.
I think I was reading Baruch's lips, maybe both. I think it is somewhat a two-edged sword or opportunity for us. With me, it has been finding to some extent, but some of that creating has been part of that finding process. Maybe joining a group they call themselves a community, but it's not necessarily. They may have common goals, but we may not share that much vested interest on an individual level. And so out of that, we might carve out some of those inner circle friends that they can be we could be a good service to more individually, and vice versa. A few weeks ago, my internet went down for 2 weeks. And so it was kind of hard to operate an online business without that connection. So I was forced to get out of the house and go to a coffee shop and set up office. And it was one of the best things that happened for me because, one, I got to see real people. I had several former students come through, and so it was kind of cool just to reconnect with old friends and former students. But I met a group of guys there that were part of a business group for local businesses. It's somewhat of a like BNI, but not BNI. It was much more informal, and out of that, I connected with them. It's a larger community, but it's me creating a community out of this community that I found. Because not everyone's going to fit. They've got everything from window washers to lawyers and finance. And so it's me finding the right fit, not just for my benefit, but for their benefit as well. So I think, it depends on the circumstances. I've had to do more creation. But everyone has been that's except for perhaps Nathan and Shane, that they have been part of a former community of mine that I sought them out and created something, or vice versa. You guys and Mindy and some others are people that I just stumbled upon in a larger group or community, and
Sure.
over time things evolved to, just this great compatible relationship.
Right.
Sure. And that I guess, yeah, that's really what it is at the end of the day. I totally agree. And I think Baruch and I also, in our show this morning, that's exactly what we came out with. It's kind of like you could find those people and maybe you might join a community that already exists. But there are elements of that creation as well. And sometimes even within that community, you have to sense whether that community is really, you're going to bring value to that community. And that is that creation within that community. You could perhaps bring a new element into there, so very much, very much relatable. And we are very close to end of time here, 3 minutes. I just want to say to the audience that's listening, and to all of you and everybody, this has been such a ride. We only have a few more shows left. 25 episodes was for this season. We're coming towards the end of our season, and it's kind of like this bittersweet moment. But we do want to let you know a little bit insight that all this was just a foundation. Season 1 was a foundation to what's coming in season 2. The real meat of the stuff that we have to offer you is coming in season 2. So stay tuned. We want you guys to be part of that inner circle. So we definitely want to hear more inputs from you all, to kind of have that discussion. What is it else that you want to hear? And just to give you all context, we created a free workshop. It's called Becoming Exceptionally Irresistible. That's a mouthful. So we call it the BEI workshop. It's on our website, yermikirkis.com, BEI, the workshop. Please join. It's free. It's every second Tuesday of every month. It's really incredible, and it really gives you an insight into what Baruch and I are all about, what we're doing. What is all of this about, and what are you going to be seeing from us in the next chapter or the next part of the journey? And in a sense, it's also inviting you all into our inner circle. So please, please use that link right there. Please join us. This has been an incredible ride, incredible guests. It's so, it's been so educational. We've gotten so much out of it. I'm sure you guys got so much out of it. It's just incredible. So thank you all. It's all of you that created this and that did this. So we, from the bottom of our hearts, seriously appreciate it.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, Yermi said it all already. I know we're talking as if it's the last episode, but I guess as you kind of get closer and closer, it's like, okay, this is becoming real. We got a couple more. Yeah, two more. But thank you for tonight. Thank you to all those that showed up, that engaged, that commented. Thank you to our awesome guest, Tom. Thank you for sharing all about what you do. For anybody who is interested, we as always, we have the follow-up recap on Fridays that will have all of Tom's social media and everything, everywhere that you can possibly connect with him. But for that, it's great show, great season, great show. We got 2 more. Thank you all for joining us. And we will see you
for finale. So
yeah, right.
You want to miss the big one.
Yeah. But it's been great, and we will see you tomorrow. We will listen to you tomorrow by the clubhouse, and see you next week, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care.